But the thing is, if you list products before you get brand registry, then get brand registry, those products aren't automatically, quote unquote, enrolled in brand registry.
Hi sellers, welcome to another episode of SellerSpeak. I'm Sagarika, I'm the Business Development Manager at SellerApp, and joining us today would be Shannon Roddy from Marketplace Seller Courses. We will be discussing about 5 crucial mistakes that you as a seller might be making in your Amazon journey and how you can rectify those. In case of any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comment box below. And let's get started. Hi Shannon, how are you? How has your Q4 been?
I'm good. It's been incredibly busy the last few weeks. It was pretty slow August, September, but things have definitely picked back up again. So
I can imagine. Are you excited for Q1? You'll get a good break there, right?
Yeah, not so much. My work continues. Always, whether it's working with clients, I think there's actually a few clients that I'm looking at. We've been doing a lot of infrastructure building. So it's things like getting listings cleaned up, getting brand registry things taken care of. And so I actually think a lot of the work will start in January of really launching those products and with advertising and everything. So I don't think things will really slow down for me. I'll get a little bit of break over Christmas and that'll pretty much be it.
So I must say it has been a jam-packed Q4 and it's going to be a jam-packed Q1 for you. All the very best. So having said that, Shannon, I would like to dive right into your seller journey. Let's start with you telling me a little bit more about how has it been for you growing on Amazon? Because I know you started with not so much guidance and here you are sharing your own journey with others so that they can grow. How has it been?
Yeah, I started 10 years ago. My wife and I got back from Africa. We spent some time in East Africa volunteering with a missionaries organization that worked with the Maasai women who made beaded jewelry and again, that beaded jewelry that they made helped provide food and water and clothing and medical care and education for their children and their families. So an incredibly empowering endeavor that we were supporting. And when we came back, I had a product idea that I'd kind of built out and I just decided I want to get it on Amazon. That's my one goal. I have no idea how, but I knew that was a platform, that was a thing. I got it up and did absolutely nothing. I just lost money the first year, no sales. I'm paying Amazon's $39.95 every month. It's the same professional seller fee now that it was then. And I just lost money. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know what a SKU was. I didn't know what a UPC code was. I had no idea how to optimize a listing, but I was learning web design at the time and SEO keyword research. And one day I had this brilliant epiphany. I wonder if Amazon can use the same SEO that Google does, because I'd learned how to do SEO keyword research for Google. And at that time, there was no SEO keyword research tool for Amazon. They did not exist. So I did the keyword research tool and I realized there was one keyword that customers were searching for a product similar to mine that was not in my product listing. So I put it in the title and sales went up by 1,500% the following year. So it was like, even though they weren't doing a ton, it was like, all of a sudden I went from doing, losing money the first year to making a little bit of money the second year to all of a sudden skyrocketing, going, wow, I had this great product, but people weren't able to discover it because they were searching keywords and those keywords weren't in my listing. And we'll talk about that today on the podcast. But there was just this element where it was that little piece that I didn't know when I got started. And I mean, they didn't even have an advertising portal back then. So it was this aspect of optimizing the listing over time, redoing product photos. I got better product photography. I got product renderings in conjunction with some stock photos, incredibly cost effective, paid a copywriter to actually redo the listings, did some advertising while Amazon allowed advertising. And then found that people wanted to buy more than one. So I started offering a multi-pack. And so to this day, I still only sell one product on Amazon. Most of my experience and expertise came from working with other brands, other sellers, and other companies over the past 8 years. So doing web design, I pivoted to Amazon. I built out Marketplace Seller Courses as essentially a hub of these are the learnings, the resources, the tools, and the strategies that I've learned working with probably now over 200 companies, something in the ballpark of that.
That's awesome.
I stopped keeping track. But everything I've learned, I turn around and I put into the courses so that my intrinsic knowledge becomes extrinsic knowledge available to anybody who wants access to it. And I just feel this sense of obligation and responsibility that if I go through a hard time in my life, if I can take what I learned from that, turn around and give it to somebody else to make their journey better or easier, that's an obligation or responsibility. And it's one that we all have, I think, whether you go through a difficult situation in your marriage or your business or, friendship, whatever it is in life, if we can turn around and essentially mentor, we don't really call it that, but it's essentially mentoring. It's here's what I've learned that can help you have a better journey. That's what Marketplace Seller Courses became. And that's where most of my experience came, is learning as I helped others. It was an incredibly gratifying and rewarding journey.
I think I've spoken to so many people who are talking about how to grow on Amazon, and this is the first time I've come across the word mentor, and that's going to stick by me. We jump right into those mistakes, and I'm going to hand it over to you. Take it away.
Let's do it. So there's a lot to cover. The first thing that I think a lot of companies know, and we covered this, briefly, but the biggest mistake that any seller makes is not knowing what they don't know. And that's something that only education will tear that down. Webinars, podcasts, even this one, articles, they're all great for additional information. But to get a baseline, you have to get all the information, that's why I built the courses, right? You have to get that solid baseline. But let's talk about some of the specific mistakes that many sellers make that I see, again, coaching all these companies. The first thing that I see them make, the mistake they make, is doing things out of order. And so it's one of the things that a lot of sellers they feel totally overwhelmed. There's so many things to do. In fact, we even have a checklist that I can give you the link to for your listeners that we offer. Please do. It just takes all the complexity out. It's like, here's the list of all the things that you need to do in order with links, right? And we see people make the mistake of doing things out of order. And a couple specific examples are advertising before optimizing. They're like, oh, I know optimizing, advertising, we've got all these, let's get advertising going. Well, the problem is if you have a 5% conversion rate and you start running ads on that, you're going to be making keyword changes, bid adjustments, pausing keywords, negating keywords that if you were to optimize first, you could go from a 5% conversion rate to a 10% conversion rate. And now all of a sudden it completely changes how you bid, how you optimize, how you advertise. Like, it completely changes everything. So if I have to take dollars and prioritize where I'm going to spend that money, you always optimize first and then you advertise, because it's going to make your advertising dollars that much more effective. I mean, I just doubled the efficacy of my ad spend if I can increase the conversion rate from 5% to 10%, right? So to frame this whole thing up, and we're going to kind of cover this in order, which is why we did a little retooling in terms of the topics that we covered in which order. But I have this sort of philosophy in terms of a successfully launch a product. It's kind of like launching a rocket. So you start with the infrastructure, the platform. You have to have a solid foundation. That's the first piece. The second piece is optimizing, and that's aiming the rocket, right? Because if you don't optimize, you don't aim it. It's sort of like, who knows where it could be pointing? It could be pointing flat. It could be pointing down. Like, you don't want to do that. If you want to hit the moon, you gotta aim it towards the moon. So optimizing your listing is aiming the rocket, and then launching the rocket is the third part. And that's adding fuel. That's advertising, affiliate marketing, that's Amazon Live, those sort of things. So we'll kind of cover those in the order, but if you do things out of order, you can advertise before you optimize, and it's going to kill your conversion. You can increase sales before you set up your systems and wind up getting suspended for things like late shipping or not handling customer service. Like, there's so many things from an infrastructure standpoint. You've got to get your foundation set first. And the two other things that are really critical are people who list products before brand registry. Now you can do what's called IP Accelerator. And the attorney firm that I work with typically is called Fisher Broyles. They're part of Amazon's IP Accelerator program. So if you don't have a trademark, get a trademark. It will help protect your brand, will help protect your products. And you can typically get that trademark process started within 30 days and then get that applied to brand registry. So you can get early access to brand registry. But the thing is, if you list products before you get brand registry, then get brand registry, those products aren't automatically, quote unquote, enrolled in brand registry. So you have to do what's called a partial update with a flat file template. Like things just get exponentially more complicated because you just sort of did things out of order. You can always go back and sort of fix it and reconnect the dots, but it's more complicated.
Just doing the double work for yourself.
Yeah, you're just having to do things twice in order to get things to work correctly. So if you get brand registry first, then list your products under your brand, they're enrolled automatically in brand registry, they're listed correctly, it's a better deal. The last thing that I see people prioritize is trying to build out a storefront. So those are people who have brand registry. You can build out an Amazon storefront, which is like a mini website, and they focus on building out their storefront before their product detail pages. You want to reverse that. Detail pages are where customers buy. That's where the majority of your traffic is going to come in. Always focus on optimizing your listings first, then focus on your storefront second. So these are small but important things that, again, a lot of sellers do out of order. They just sort of feel confused and overwhelmed. What should I do? When should I do it? What should I do first? And that's the first thing that we really educate sellers on is what to do and in what order.
I completely agree when you mentioned that your foundations need to be strong before you take the next steps, because if that's not how you're going to do it, it is going to go haywire. And as you mentioned about brand registry and listing your products, especially now when Amazon has become such a big market and it's super competitive, it's really important to bring about that brand loyalty and brand management, and no better way to do that than brand registry. I also know that with brand registry, you get access to brand analytics reports. What are your thoughts about those?
I mean, all those things are beneficial. It's kind of like my friend Jen Harada talks about hashtags in social media posts. Those hashtags get you an additional 5%, 2%, 3%, but it's not the main thing that you need to focus on. The brand analytics can give you some feedback and data once you already have sales. If you don't have sales, the brand analytics is worthless because there's no data to give you anything. So it goes back to priority and focus. You need brand registry. Right. You have to protect your brand. You need a trademark to get brand registry. So do those things, but always focus on, optimizing your listings first, launching products. And then the third step we look at our Amazon flywheel is analyze. We analyze the data, and that's where brand analytics would come in. We take that analysis, we put it back into listing optimization and back into making tweaks on the advertising.
Makes a lot of sense. Also in advertising, I do believe with brand registry, you also get to run video ads for a seller who's new to the forefront, and there is so much, and it's, as you mentioned, overwhelming for them. What do you think would be the priority for them to be running video ads once they're set up with the initial steps? Is it effective, or is it something that they should look at somewhere later on in their journey?
Yeah, no, I would definitely prioritize that. Video is key. And we know this just from social media that, if you look at the percentages of how much video content is taking up over text posts and image posts, it's insane. The engagement rate goes up. So depending on the product, depending on the category, video can be more or less effective, but it also depends on how good is the video, right? So there's some subjective elements there. But for most clients, you have to think about sort of the barrier to entry. You have to have a trademark and brand registry. So there's a lot of companies that still don't have that. Even if you have a trademark, they don't necessarily have brand registry. You have to have video assets. So a lot of companies don't have video assets. And then you have to know that you can even run video advertising, know how to do it and how to set that up. And that also takes out a level of competition. So in most categories, there's maybe only one or two sellers or companies running video advertising. And so again, it's becoming more and more popular, but if you can do a good quality video for your listing in your category and run it with good keywords, video advertising can be incredibly effective. Once you get your main sponsored products up, sponsored product advertising, I would definitely prioritize video.
I do understand a lot of us are, especially now with everything becoming so visual, it's engagement, and having a good video out there, it would definitely help you with growing. How about other mistakes that the sellers might be making? What would be some other mistakes that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, so the second big picture, thing that sellers do in terms of mistakes is they fail to protect their listings. And so you can build a great listing, but if you think about it, you could build a great house, maybe you built a nice vacation home somewhere, if you don't protect it, if you don't put up a fence around it, if you don't install a security system, if you don't have basic things set up to make sure that it's not going to flood, that it's not going to catch fire, like there's some basic things you need to do to protect your home. The same is true of your listings. So the first thing that sellers need to do is they need to monitor their listings. And I know you guys have a service that offers that through SellerApp, but you have to sign up with something that's going to monitor your listings 24/7, that's going to send you text or email alerts, within 10 to 15 minutes of something happening. Because in some cases, I've had companies and sellers where they go in a couple days later, 2 or 3 or 4 days later, and they've had a listing down for 4 or 5 days. They had no idea. That could be worth thousands and thousands of dollars. In fact, one of my clients reached out to me, this is probably a year ago. They did not have monitoring set up on their top listings. Their number one best-selling product was a custom product. And so of course they can make as many as they want. So they had just put in like 1,000 units or whatever. Well, they had never updated that. Eventually that inventory got down to 0 and it turned off. And so he emails me one day, he goes, why are our sales cut off? So I jump in and I look at it, I'm like, you're out of inventory for your custom product that you have plenty of inventory that you can make. And so that's a really great example of why it's so important. But we've had situations where in some cases your account got suspended, and the way you will see that is the listings will get shut down and you'll get that notification. So making sure you're monitoring your listings is incredibly critical. And then also in terms of compliance, making sure you're doing things in line with Amazon policy so that Amazon doesn't suppress your listing. Not if you have titles longer than 200 characters in most categories, that's going to suppress your listing. Not having images correctly can suppress the listing. Keywords like antibacterial or antifungal can get it flagged as a pesticide, knowing not to use those. So there's a lot of do's and don'ts that you want to abide by, because that's going to ensure that your listing stays active. Again, it's all about protecting what you have built and invested in.
Definitely, I do believe it's quite important for you to protect whatever assets you've put so much effort into, right? But as you mentioned that you've had somebody who already went through the entire process of having the listing taken down and losing out on inventory, how tedious is that process and what do the success rates look like? You did mention earlier on that with Amazon, for sellers, it can be a little more hard pressing as compared to how friendly they are for the consumers.
Sure.
So what does this process look like for a seller, and what would be the success rates?
You're talking about in terms of getting an account back specifically?
Yeah, and in case they do miss out on the alerts and they have any issues, how long does it take them, and would it quote per quote lead to a mental breakdown for a seller?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different types of issues. So a suppression issue can be something as simple as, we need to go and remove this keyword or update this, and within 10 minutes your listings are back up. Those are very easy. In some cases, it can be a product restriction. In some cases, your account can get suspended. For the manufacturers and brands that I work with, the number one issue that we see is late shipping. So failing to confirm shipping and ship on time with tracking numbers. And we've seen that be anything from their 3PL software, because you have to have a software integration. You do not want to rely on this manually. Right. But in some cases, their integration broke and they didn't have somebody manually monitoring those daily shipments to make sure they were going out. In some cases, the system was pushing the tracking information back, but Amazon was not receiving it. And so making sure that you have manual processes in place. And if you have a customer service person, all they have to do is to go in once a day and check the unshipped orders and make sure that there's nothing that's a day behind. So that's sort of one element of it. In terms of a listing getting suspended or an account getting suspended, it could just completely, run the gamut in terms of the range of things that it could be and how long it takes to get back. So there's no set answer. We use e-commerce Chris, so Chris McCabe and Liam McHugh, for any account suspensions, product restrictions, compliance issue. They're just my go-to team. They do it full time. Chris is former Seller Performance, and Leah's been doing it for years as well in terms of listing compliance. They're both amazing. And so we just sort of outsource where we know this is not my core strength or talent. Even when my own clients face a compliance issue that Amazon's asking for documentation, we just reach out to Chris and Leah and have them handle it.
Shout out to them, guys. If you're listening to this, we really appreciate the work you're doing.
So the other couple things that we see in terms of failing to protect listings for all sellers is not doing defensive brand ads. And I know this is a hot topic and people go back and forth about it. But usually if you're bidding on your own brand name and your own product names, it's going to be the lowest cost per click and the highest conversion rate because people are looking for it. And so it's very low cost. I mean, I had a client that was doing thousands of dollars in brand ads at a 2.5% ACoS. And they're like, well, I think the company wants to shut it down. I'm like, you're spending $167 to be thousands of dollars in revenue. Keep them going, right? And some of the counter arguments are, well, if people are looking for your product, they're going to scroll past all of these ads and they're going to go find your product organically. And guess what? Surprise, surprise. One of the things that we do in advertising is we advertise on competitor terms because guess what? It works. So just because your customers are searching for your brand doesn't mean they're that diehard brand loyal. Maybe they heard you on a show. Maybe they read somewhere online or a friend told them about your product. They're like, oh, let me go check this out. It doesn't mean they're a diehard loyal fan. It just means that that's what they're looking for. So defensive brand advertising is usually the most cost-effective advertising and the important to do just to protect your listing. So other people can do whatever they want. We do branded dominance. So we have a brand ad at the top with all of our 3 best-selling products. We'll have typically 4 sponsored product listings if we can, and then we have organic, and then we'll have a video ad. We just want to dominate page 1 for our branded terms because it also lets people know we're the industry leader in that category, for that, and we don't want people sort of edging in on our territory. So that's number 1 for any seller. And then number 2 is if you are a brand owner, and specifically if you're in retail, making sure that you remove unauthorized resellers, because that can create a very poor experience for customers, or at minimum, it can create an unpredictable and an uncertain experience for customers because you don't know where they got the product, you don't know how old the product is, you don't know the customer service they're gonna provide. It also prevents you from doing advertising. And in order to do that, you need map and distribution enforcement policies. So we use companies like BrandGuard and eEnforce to help out to build those out using your trademark. But it's just knowing ahead of time, this is something that needs to be on my radar. This is something I need to know how to do. And once you have those map and distribution enforcement policies in place, you use those listing monitoring tools to go, hey, a reseller just jumped on one of my listings. Well, now we've got to go ahead. We got to contact them. We got to tell them to get off and tell them why.
That does make a lot of sense, especially if you're not protecting your brand, everything that you've put across, all those efforts and whatever efforts you're also putting into making your product the very best, if you're not removing those unauthorized resellers, you're going to land in trouble. So this is an important note for anybody to take. I agree with it. 200%. If that's logically possible, we'll do 200. I'll take 200%. But the important thing is, if somebody buys your product through a reseller and leaves a negative product review, that product review is not going away. It's sticking. And it affects your brand equity. Brand equity is actually the most important thing a brand owner can build and protect on Amazon. And brand equity is simply a customer's perceived value of your brand. That's it, perceived value. You have to back it up with the actual value of the quality of the products and the service. But if you allow resellers or anybody else to destroy the perceived value of your brand and product, that can be really damaging. I'll mention another quick shout out because Chris and Leah talk about this a lot. It's unfortunate we live in this day and age and people in society still do this. I think it's just horrific, but people will do negative review campaigns against competitors. And if you find that all of a sudden overnight, you're getting hundreds of negative product reviews, negative, tons of returns, like all of a sudden something seems really off, it could be a negative product review campaign. And Chris and Leah actually handle that as one of their services. So don't feel completely helpless. You can reach out to Amazon, but I recommend bringing in somebody like Chris or Leah to
help you navigate that, because it is sadly in this day and age a real thing that people do. We have not had that happen with most of our companies and brands, but there's some petty bickering among some sellers in certain categories, unfortunately.
Well, fingers crossed. They learn from you that it's always about growing together and not fighting about products.
If you have a better product and better strategy, you're going to win. So let the game play. Let's talk about the next part, because it plays into this whole idea of brand equity. And that's the mistake that most sellers make, is not providing outstanding customer service. Again, Amazon's goal is to be the most consumer-centric company in the world. And if you're going to be successful on Amazon's platform, you're going to have to surpass the metrics that they hold you to, that they hold you accountable to. So your seller account health, you're not looking for like a decent sort of 75. You're not looking for a passing grade, okay? You want your seller feedback to be as close to 100%. You want your product reviews to be good. And so a couple of the ways that you can deal with this: number one, sending proactive feedback emails. Amazon still allow this. There's a lot of misinformation out there. Oh, Amazon doesn't allow that anymore. As of right now, they still allow proactive emails, 1 email per order to customers, that you can basically ask for a product review or seller feedback. There's a request to review feature that you can do as well. But sending a proactive email and just saying, hey, we're here if you have questions. If you didn't receive your product, one of the ways I phrase this is, we hope you received your product on time and in excellent condition, or we expect that you received your product on time and in excellent condition. If you have any questions or comments about your order, let us know. Well, that puts in the customer's mind, if I didn't receive my product or it wasn't in excellent condition, I should reach out to the seller, because they actually care. They want to know when I have a problem. They are offering to help customer service. In fact, we even recommend in your seller bio, put that you are a consumer-centric company and say, hey, if you have questions about customer service, we're here to help. If they happen to check out your seller bio as they're vetting which seller they're going to buy product from, they're going to see that. So that's just a proactive way of being consumer-centric and building your brand equity. A couple other best practices that we always do is, if a customer experiences any problem with their order, and it doesn't matter if it was shipping, it doesn't matter if it was your fault or not. If it was a shipping error, manufacturer defect, they received the wrong color product, we're going to give them a partial refund, typically of 15%, and then we're going to fix their issue on top of that. Oh, you got the wrong color? You know what? Keep it, depending on how expensive it is. Keep it, and we're going to send if it's really expensive, here's the paid shipping to send it back. But if manufacturer defect, if you didn't receive your product, I'm so sorry, we're going to ship out a second one. Let's verify your address first. 15% refund on the order. It just builds goodwill. And we will find an enormous amount of positive seller feedback and product reviews that mention the customer service that they got. I know they're supposed to be mutually exclusive. Like, seller feedback is only for the seller experience and product reviews is only for the product experience. But we have people leave product reviews that say, I just had the most amazing experience with their customer service. They gave me a 15% refund. I didn't even ask for it. And I've worked with some companies where, in one case, it was like a husband and wife, and the husband did the manufacturing and the wife handled customer service. And she would literally get on and argue with customers. And they want us to pay return shipping.
That's
I'm not
nice.
Paying for that, and we're not going to cover that, and that's your fault. And I'm like, you are crazy, because you are fighting with one customer over a $10 product. And that's going to lead to a negative review that is going to be viewed by thousands of future potential customers. Why in the world would you not offer great customer service? And there's a great stat that was taken from Southwest Airlines years ago, one of the best known customer service airlines in the industry. If a customer has a negative experience and you're able to turn it into a positive one, something like 80% of those customers will stay with you for life, meaning they will come back to you because they know, even if they didn't like the product, even if they didn't have a good experience with the product, they can trust you as a company that you're going to back it with good customer service. So making sure that you're proactively handling customer service, and I even call it pre-customer service. If you get questions frequently, add that information to your listing so customers don't have to reach out and ask you. Make sure it's proactive. And even with your seller feedback, I mean, I've had customers where I'll be coaching with a client and they'll say, oh, we're not winning the buy box and what's going on. I was like, well, your seller account's health is down. I didn't even know where that was. How do I find that? And they had all these negative product reviews and the seller feedback, and Amazon will remove those because it's not indicative of the seller. It can be indicative of the seller if you didn't describe the product accurately. But if you get negative seller feedback, you want to reach out to those customers. You don't want to just respond to their negative feedback because that does nothing. You want to reach out to that customer. In some cases, we'll offer a refund, we'll send a replacement. Then we'll ask Amazon to remove the negative feedback. And if Amazon won't do it, we'll ask the seller to remove the negative feedback. You can do that with seller feedback, not product reviews, but seller feedback. If you resolve the issue, you can ask them to remove their negative seller feedback. Again, it's about protecting your brand equity.
I am really 100% on this with you, because if I'm buying any product, my first thing is, okay, here's the product. This is what the product looks like. And the next thing that I'm going to jump to is directly the reviews. Yeah. Nothing in between. And then that's where I decide whether I'm going to go and look at the listing and everything and whether I want to buy it.
Absolutely.
So it's absolutely necessary to deal with that. I did have a question which you already answered about how sellers can handle the negative reviews. Another thing that I would love to hear from you about would be the product inserts that some of the sellers tend to do. It's always amazing to have a personalized product coming my way. And I do know that sometimes Amazon tends to be a little finicky about it. What are your thoughts?
So it's fairly clear. We are, I recommend using product inserts where they make sense. And basically the product inserts policy is the same as your feedback email policy. So you can do anything in a product insert that you can do in an email. Remember, Amazon's going to open these products, right? Especially if you're using FBA. Amazon's going to open the product. They're going to review these inserts, and people are getting suspended for using inserts manipulatively. Some of the big ones are, don't attempt to redirect people to your website. I bought a product. It was like a rubber ring. And the first thing I got, was it says, hey, thanks so much for ordering from Amazon. Here's 50% off our website. It's like, come on. Okay. It's a blatant attempt to redirect people to your website. Amazon's going to flag you for that. If you get caught, competitors are going to order your product. They're going to report it to Amazon. You're going to get suspended for life. Is it really worth sacrificing all future Amazon sales to direct a handful of customers to your website? You know why they shop on Amazon? Because they love Amazon, because they're Amazon customers. And the way I look at it is, if you're trying to keep your sales velocity up to get to a #1 bestseller, you want to keep every single Amazon customer on Amazon. Why would you ever try to take people out of the mix and get them to order from your website? I know you're sort of like looking to leave traffic. If you want more traffic to your website, go get more traffic to your website. Go build out your social, go do ads. But keep Amazon customers on Amazon. It's good policy. It's good ethics. If you don't want to abide by that, don't sell on the platform, right? Just do the rest of us a favor and keep, just get off and keep it simple. So in terms of inserts, you can ask for an honest product review. You cannot ask for only positive feedback. You can't do what's called diverting, which is if you had a good experience, leave a product review. If you had a bad experience, contact us. You can't do that. You can't offer any incentive, no partial refunds, no reimbursements. Amazon actually just clarified their policy. It's been pretty known in terms of what they suspend people for. They just wrote a clarification a couple weeks ago that basically said, all these attempts to manipulate sales rank or product reviews is against the Amazon policy. So don't do it. If you're really curious and want to know, then take your product insert as a JPEG or PDF and contact seller support and upload it and say, can you take a look at this and let me know if this passes Amazon approval? And at least you have a case to refer to. Make sure you read all the relevant policies. There's a handful. Make sure you run it by seller support and say, does this, pass muster? And that's one way that you can sort of make sure that you're in line with Amazon POS. Again, if you're looking to protect your brand equity, you've got to protect your account and you've got to protect your listings and make sure that you're going to be able to stay on. I call this legitimacy for longevity. If you want to be on Amazon for a long time, you got to play by the rules. Amazon will eventually suspend you, and all that free money is going to go down the drain, and you're going to be stuck trying to figure out what you're going to do next. So the companies that I coach have had to do very little in terms of changing their strategy, because we've largely just, by and large, just played by the rules of what Amazon recommends and suggests.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're not going to be abiding by any of the policies, you are going to land yourself in trouble, and it's no use putting yourself through so much trouble for just maybe 1 or 2 conversions.
Yeah. I know we're limited on time. Let's dive into the 4th one, because this is really critical. And this is where I found my initial success was, mistake number 4 is failing to capitalize on SEO keyword research. And so the way I look at it is success on Amazon is organically ranking for your product's top keywords. So that's sort of the most highly searched relevant keywords that are relevant to your product. If you can organically rank at the top 3 spots, those top 3 spots get something like 66% of the organic clicks. It's incredible. Mm-hmm. Amazon is first and foremost a search engine. So if you can get to the top ranking of that, that's crazy in terms of the amount of, again, free traffic that you're going to get. You're likely going to have to pay to get there, using advertising to get there, which we'll talk about in the 5th step. But you have to make sure that you are, in order to capitalize on SEO keyword research, you have to, number 1, understand your target terms. What are the individual keywords that make up search terms that customers are looking for? So I have a great video on LinkedIn on SEO keyword research that I did for a deodorant company. And it was like natural deodorant for women, aluminum-free women's deodorant. Like there was all these sort of target terms that we looked at. And once you understand your target terms, then you can create search phrases, and you're going to do the keyword research using a keyword research tool and discover what are all the relevant keywords that I can use to, number 1, integrate those into my listings. And then number 2, advertise on those terms, right? Because again, it's about discoverability so that customers can discover what our product is. And I call this, the effect sort of the Amazon trifecta. It's discoverability plus buyability equals rankability. Discoverability is SEO keyword research. It's Amazon's A9 search algorithm has to know what your product is. If you don't tell the algorithm what your product is by including those keyword terms, Amazon doesn't know. And at the same time, if you don't include the right keywords, the customers are never going to find your product. So in order to be discovered, you have to include the SEO keyword research. Discovery plus buyability, which is the listing optimization, optimized title, optimized product features, images, video, A+ content, so forth, is where customers convert. So that determines your conversion rate. And discoverability plus buyability equals rankability. So if we include the keywords aluminum-free women's deodorant in our keyword terms and in our listing, then we advertise on that and we've optimized our listing for those things. The more people search that term, find our product, buy it, add it to the cart and buy it, the higher our product will organically rank for those terms. It's very simple. Right. And it's what I love about Amazon. It's not Google. It's a very closed system. They do the search, they do the purchase, the credit, everything is in one closed loop system and is very trackable. The data for advertising is incredibly accurate because it's all Amazon. So that's one of the things that I love, but failing to really truly capitalize on SEO keyword research. And I see a lot of brands do this. Even if they've watched sort of a coaching video that I've walked them through, they'll do keyword research and they'll come back with just tons of generic terms, really broad terms, in some cases completely irrelevant terms. It is an art and a science. I've been doing it for 8 years, so I'm very good at it. It's taken me a long time to achieve that skill. If SEO keyword research is not something you're great at, hire someone who can help you, because will typically take 2 to 3 hours for a single product, keyword research for a single product.
Right.
It is the most mentally exhausting, emotionally exhausting, time-consuming, monotonous, line-by-line research. There are some tools and gurus who recommend, you just look at all your competitors, you look at the keywords they're using, you dump them all into a pile, and then you just pull from those. Terrible idea, because there's going to be a lot of irrelevant junk in there, and that's going to hurt your conversion rate. It's going to hurt your advertising. So we really want to go down to relevant terms. And the way you determine relevance, by the way, is you just take that term, plug it back into Amazon, scroll past all the advertised listings, and look at organically what shows up. If the products that show up organically are your competitors, and you ask yourself the question, does my product belong here? It's relevant. If you scroll down, you're like, these don't match at all, probably not a relevant search term, because Amazon customers are telling you, these are the products we buy when we search this term. So if you search this term and these products don't look like yours, it's not a good term. So we really do the work, but I tell companies, this is where the money is. This is where the money is. 2 to 3 hours per product of strong SEO keyword research. We integrate those into listings. Then we take and we build out a holistic advertising structure to advertise on those terms.
So Shannon, earlier on, you mentioned that there was one particular keyword that changed the game for you. And for the big reveal, I've been holding on to this question. With this particular session, I would love to know what was that one keyword that changed the game?
That keyword was chart. It was chart. I won't tell you what the product was. It's totally, I didn't give you an answer. But it's simply a matter of you have to do the keyword research for your product and know what the search terms are that customers are looking for. And the last thing I'll mention is the search terms in the back end of your product listing. Probably 98% of all companies and sellers do these wrong. They add commas, they add duplicate keywords, they add redundant keywords, they try to do phrases like in Google. Understand how search terms are done correctly. And these are things that we cover on our course. But it's the kind of thing where if you put a lot of irrelevant keywords in your search terms, your auto campaigns are going to perform terribly. And if you don't put the right keywords in your search terms, your good relevant keyword campaigns may not perform at all, because Amazon has to recognize keywords in your listing, because otherwise they'll say, you're wanting to advertise on this keyword. We don't even see that anywhere in your listing. We don't think this is relevant. We're not even going to show your product as an ad. We're not even going to give you impressions, let alone clicks, because, Amazon doesn't determine clicks. They just do the impressions, but we're not even going to give you impressions for this keyword because it's not relevant. So you got to add the right keywords and remove the wrong keywords. And that's going to help protect your advertising, which unsurprisingly brings us to our 5th biggest mistake that sellers make.
I just wanted to point out before we switch to that, as you mentioned, that it gets quite overwhelming for sellers, especially when they have multiple listings to manage, that every keyword was going to take 2 to 3 hours. So SellerApp's product intelligence tool is actually really helpful, because you can basically look at where exactly which keyword is in terms of the title or the description. So if you want to have a look, go ahead. And as Shannon mentioned, hire someone for SEO.
Yeah. So let's talk about advertising, because this is a huge one. And Sagarita, when we started years ago, there was no advertising platform, and it used to be 85% of your success is in the setup. It still is, but we could do the we could do the listing optimization, the SEO, the images, all these things, and then we could just achieve these incredible sales. Now you can do all those things, and your competitors can do half of that, but blow you out of the water by doing better advertising. Now advertising, dictates 90% of your success, which is just crazy to think about, but it's becoming a bigger and bigger part of success on Amazon. And, certainly the cost per clicks are going up, which is, just a result of it becoming a more competitive platform. More and more companies are diverting ad budget to Amazon. So the key is you want to make sure that you're not wasting ad dollars. And I did an audit of a client's account just a couple months ago. Over an entire year, they'd spent something like $16,000 on advertising with a horrible return. And, I was just, so they were using a company to do the advertising. They were using a tool to do the advertising. So again, just because you hire an agency who uses a tool, it doesn't mean it's going to go great. And they were actually thinking of shutting their Amazon account down. That's actually why they called me. We need help. We need help shutting down our Amazon account because it's not working. I started looking into it. I go, your conversion rate is really incredible. Like it was 40 or 50%. I said, this is amazing. And I said, we looked at the sales numbers were pretty strong. I said, the advertising, 50% of that $8,000 was on 2 auto campaigns that is just sort of broad match against all things. And it just blew $8,000 of their money for 2 single auto campaigns. The third one took up another 25% of the budget. So another $4,000 on a single keyword broad match, which is basically like advertising blindfolded with a shotgun. There's just no good formula to make that work. And so, I really strongly urged them. I said, you need to reanalyze this. I said, I actually think you could do really well. What you had was a poor advertising strategy. And so I tell companies, educate yourself, even if you hire somebody else to do it, educate yourself so that you understand the mistakes that you need to avoid and that you need to make sure the agency you're hiring is going to avoid making. So number 5, failing to utilize the best advertising structures and best practices. If you ask 100 different advertising experts, best advertising practices, you're going to get literally 100 different answers. There are literally no 2 advertising experts that agree on everything. And to be fair, there's a handful that work, but I can tell you after auditing hundreds of Amazon advertising accounts, the mistakes that I've seen, the similar repetitive mistakes that I've seen over and over again are very clear. And so I want to clear those up with a couple best practices that I recommend, okay? Number 1, 1 product per ad group, 1 ad group per campaign. And this is something that some advertising experts will argue with. That's fine. If you want to do it a different way, you can do it. But what I have seen is when I look at this, if you do multiple products per ad group, all of those products, in some cases, they're different prices. In some cases, they're different variants. They have different colors. In some cases, they're different because they're different prices. The ROI on that advertising is completely different. Your ACoS is completely different. This one converts at a 14% ACoS. This converts at a 40% ACoS. That's a huge difference. And you don't get to tell Amazon which product to show for which term. So what we want to do is we want to take that decision out of Amazon's hand and say, if I can advertise the same exact keywords for product A as for product B, but at a different bid because it's going to be a different conversion rate. And it's going to do, it's a different profit margin. And so again, you want to have granularity for control. I will say this, the 4 key cornerstones to great advertising is scalability, manageability, visibility, and profitability. Okay. So you've got to be able to take whatever model you use for one product and scale it to multiple products. It has to be manageable. So it's not so overwhelming that it's like, oh my gosh, I've got 1,000 campaigns and I can't even see which ones are which, and to optimize them takes hours every week. You have to be able to have visibility into where your sales are coming from, and you have to be able to know what levers do I need to pull to be profitable, right? That's it. So those are the 4 pillars or cornerstones of advertising. Now, 1 product per ad group, I've sort of laid out. 1 ad group per campaign is also for a very similar reason. If you have multiple ad groups per campaign, you cannot tell Amazon, show this ad group more and this ad group less. You can't control the budget allocation. Whichever one gains traction initially is the one that will gain momentum and eat up most of the budget. So to give you an example, I was coaching a client, a global brand or national brand. I won't mention the name. They were using an advertising agency, a very reputable one, and they had 20 ad groups in one campaign. And they basically had a campaign for a type of keyword, and then they had an ad group for each of the different products. And what we discovered was the ad group at the bottom with literally 0 impressions in the last 30 days, had not been shown one time, was the ad group for their most profitable product. So the one that had the greatest profit margin was not being advertised at all, because the ad group at the top that was eating up all the budget was just, getting all the sales dollars. So being able to separate that so that we take that decision out of Amazon's hand. So that's the first point. The second one is we want to separate broad phrase and exact match. And we used to put some of them in the same ad groups because it gave us some visibility to which keywords were performing. The problem is, what happens if I want to really maximize my exact match and I want to increase the budget for that ad group in that campaign? I can't tell Amazon to spend it more on the exact match than the broad match or the phrase match.
Yeah, that's going to just happen by Amazon itself.
Right. So separating those gives you the ability to more finely control, again, where your ad dollars go. And one of the things that we've noticed with broad matches, it used to be Amazon would use that keyword. If you have 3 keywords in your broad match term, the customer has to search those 3 terms, but it can be in any order. But Amazon now says, well, it can be those terms or any synonyms, basically anything even remotely similar, which kind of throws broad match out the window. And another advertising expert that I talked to, Ritu Java, we talked about this idea of using broad modifiers. which says, okay, Amazon, they have to actually use this keyword. And that's just using a plus sign before that keyword. So we use a plus sign before the broad match typically. You can do a broad match campaign, but it's really more just discovery. It's similar to an auto campaign. It's just trying a bunch of different things. If you want to go after specific broad match terms, consider using broad modified and separating those broad phrase and exact, because you can say, I can allocate the budget between the match types because they're going to convert, at a different rate and a different level.
Understood. So I think I wanted to understand a little more about how a seller can, I know we need to wrap up really quickly. Yeah. So this is the only question that I would like to add to this particular mistake is, how can somebody go about setting their target ACoS so that they're not really losing out on the entire process? As you mentioned, there can be campaigns with 14% ACoS and 40%. So what would be a good practice for somebody who's just starting off to not land themselves in trouble?
Yeah, there's no target ACoS, unfortunately, because it depends primarily on your goal and on your mission. I wrote an article on the Take a Metrics blog called Why ACoS is Not the Most Important Metric. That kind of answers that, right? Well, if you're in growth phase, ACoS is not going to be the most important thing. If you're looking to organically rank your product, your ACoS could be extremely high, but your TACoS, your total acquired cost of sale, meaning all the organic sales that you get as a result of your, paid increase, that's gonna impact that. You have to look at the whole picture. So there isn't really a target ACoS. It really comes down to your profit margins and your goal, where you're at in the life cycle. Are you launching? Are you trying to grow? Are you trying to gain profitability? And you typically have to go through those three phases before you get to, profitability. You have to discover keywords before you can, sort of bid down, if you will. But just utilizing a better structure is the best way to be able to optimize for whatever your ideal target ACoS is. And the two last, important pieces are, number one, separating your branded, generic, and competitor terms. So I've seen, I'll do an analysis or an audit of a client's advertising campaign. We'll see that they've got branded terms in the campaign, they've got generic and competitor terms. And in some cases, they had put like a 300, 400% modifier, for top of search in that campaign. It's like, well, we want to do that for branded terms or well converting terms, but not competitor terms. They're spending 400 or 500% ACoS. So separating those allows you to optimize each campaign much more effectively. The last is you can decide how you want to break keywords up. Some people like to do it by meaning. So in the case of the deodorant, we're going to go after aluminum-free deodorant versus all natural deodorant in separate campaigns, all those keywords. In some cases, the other recommendation is you can separate keywords by the search volume, so that the higher search volume keywords are kind of in their own campaign, so that you don't have the same situation we talked about with ad groups, where the high search volume terms eat up all the budget and the low search volume terms never get shown, because Amazon goes, why would we show a new term when we know this term is going to convert and bring us money? Let's go after this one. So Amazon for advertising, they're not just looking to get the ad spend. They want the 15% referral fee. They want the FBA pick and pack fee. And so they're looking for the whole kit and caboodle. So just breaking keywords down into those main principles is going to make your advertising 1,000 times more effective. You have to understand the strategy. As you mentioned with SellerApp, you can use advertising tools to help, but a tool can never take the place of a human strategy for how, what are the best keywords to advertise? How should I break these keywords down? And how to optimize the bids over time.
Completely agree. I mean, at the end of the day, there's AI and there's human, and no comparison. You can't really produce any results until you put your heart and mind to it.
Yeah. There's, and the companies that I found that have been the most successful, the brand owner, oftentimes the brand owner themselves got behind the strategy. They didn't execute it, but they had to learn enough to know what needed to be done to really get in there, get their hands wet, their feet dirty, however you want to phrase it. And you got to do the work, and then you can delegate and pass it off. But to not understand it, to not really get it and delegate it, is a very dangerous situation that more oftentimes than not will end up hurting you. So I hope, Sagarita, that these have been helpful. The 5 biggest mistakes that we've seen most sellers make, and hopefully by avoiding them, sellers are able to achieve more success, more growth, and greater profits and increase.
I definitely agree. This has been mighty helpful, even for me. I have learned a lot through this session. I just wanted to thank you, Shannon, for taking out the time and being here. And do you have any final messages for the sellers?
Yeah, I would say, go out and get educated, have fun, and most importantly, pursue products that you're really passionate about, that you really love, that you really care about getting out into the world, because that's what's going to actually help you become most successful.
Amen to that. And thank you for all the sellers for watching our episode. And don't forget to watch the other episodes of the SellerSpeak podcast. And please don't forget to like this video and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. And additionally, if you do happen to have any more questions, you can always shoot them across to us in the comment box. And until next time, happy selling.